Welcome to Blended Scotch Reviews, episode number 34 by Stab the Dragon Productions. Today is Saturday, November 1st, 2025, and I'm coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where we currently have a very pleasant 70 degrees and sunshine, though it was raining this morning. We're on a little bit of an excursus from our regular Blended Scotch Reviews to conduct our second family feud. The Dewar's family was the first feud, but now we're in the famous Grouse family. We have studied the basic grouse, somewhere in here, the basic grouse, the famous grouse, and we have looked at ruby cask, bourbon cask, and last but not least, smoky black, the black grouse. Tonight, well, what we've done is we've analyzed each of these whiskeys separately with an individual review, and then we started a little mini tournament. And the first go-round was the famous grouse versus the ruby cask, and famous grouse was the winner. Then we looked at bourbon grouse and smoky black, and smoky black won. So what we're doing today is the loser's bracket, although I might add, none of these whiskeys are losers. I absolutely like each one of these. I would never turn it down. If somebody offered me a drink, or if somebody offered me a bottle and said, hey, and some of these, like smoky and famous grouse, I've had about 3 bottles of each. And so that, those are repeats. And if I can find the bourbon cask again, I'd probably get it and the ruby cask. But some of these cask finish series are getting scarce. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to find those other ones. So today we're looking at these two in a competition, head-to-head competition. The ruby cask versus the bourbon cask. There you go. Head-to-head right here. Now, normally in a tournament I go through all the details of each whiskey, but since I've already covered all those extensively in the previous videos of this series, today we're simply going to focus on the direct competition. We have appearance, we have nose, taste, mouthfeel, burn, and finish. And all this is going to be conducted blind because I've got some blacked out glasses here. I will attempt to choose a winner, a favorite, and it is possible to tie, I suppose. I mean, it has happened in the past with a couple of whiskeys. And normally what I do with that is the best price will be the tiebreaker, and availability. And so, sometimes you got a great price but no availability. So that it gets complex. So, we try to do a tiebreaker if we can. Now, today, ruby cask has a little bit of an advantage. If you'll look at the box, you see the flying grouse. But when you compare it to the bourbon grouse only has one wing. I'm not sure what happened to him. Did the hunter get him? Did he get a wing shot off? I don't know. One wing versus flying grouse. Flying grouse wins the bottle label, packaging, marketing, I guess. But then we also look at appearance of these whiskeys, and I tend to prefer darker whiskeys. So when we hold these up, there's not really a whole lot of difference, but this one is the ruby cask, and it is a little bit darker. You can tell. And for me, aesthetically, I prefer darker whiskeys. So ruby cask has got 2 advantages going into this head-to-head competition. It's got the flying grouse on the label, and then it's darker. So advantage ruby cask. But the real deciding factor here is nose, taste, mouthfeel, burn, and finish. So let's start by nosing these whiskeys. I'm going to go from left to right. And usually what happens is if I can discern a stronger nose on one of these 2 whiskeys, well, then I'll taste the other one first. It works to my advantage, I think, in identifying these if I go from the weaker whiskey to the stronger. All right, so on my left, this is not real strong. I smell vague sweetness. Nothing real discernible. Very faint nose. Go to the one on my right. Maybe a slightly stronger nose, but it's close. I'd hesitate to choose. I'm getting nothing spectacular with either of these. Hmm. Okay. I'm thinking the one on the right may have the stronger nose, and I think that's going to be glass number 2, Ruby Cask. I kind of think this is the Bourbon Cask, but it's really a little bit fainter. So glass on the right wins the nose, but not by much. So we'll start by tasting the one on the left, since it may have been a little bit weaker. This is going to be incredibly hard, because these two are somewhat similar, but if I had to guess, I think this is the Bourbon Cask again. I think this is glass number 1. I think I'm getting some wood, bourbon notes, caramel, maybe a little bit of vanilla. Me and vanilla don't get along very well. It's real hard for me to smell or taste vanilla. When I was testing this one, I was able to smell and taste vanilla. Tonight, I'm not so sure. Okay, that's the one on the left. It's a pleasant drink, definitely. And I lean towards that being glass number 1. All right, let's go to this one on the right. Wow. And I'm just not real sure. That may be the Ruby Cask. That might be glass number 2. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to choose between these two. Hmm. Wow. All right. For mouthfeel, they're about equal. Burn, they're about equal. Previously, I hadn't been getting any burn from these. Today, I'm getting a little bit of burn on both. You know, sometimes it's your palate varies from day to day. Sometimes it's what you last ate. I don't know, but I'm getting just a little hint of a burn, which is pleasant. I like the burn. I actually prefer whiskeys that have a good burn to them. And so these are going to be about the same on the mouthfeel and the burn and the finish. Trying to decide which one I like the best. This is going to be almost impossible. And then to identify which is which, I don't know. Starting back with the one on the left. I'm still thinking that's glass number 1, the bourbon cask. Man, I'm going to say the one on the right wins the taste, but mouthfeel, burn, and finish is going to be a tie. So the one on the right, I think, won the nose, but by just a hair. And the same thing with the taste. It's just a little bit. So I'm going to side with the one on the right, but there's not much difference. Which is which? I think the one on the right is glass number 2, the ruby cask. So I'm going to say this is the winner, but not by much. I think it's glass number 2, the ruby cask. Nope, I was wrong. This is glass number 1. That's the bourbon cask. Now going into this, okay, and so the ruby cask is glass number 2. Going into this, I kind of favored the bourbon cask, but I hadn't done a head-to-head yet. But I really kind of thought, well, the ruby cask is going to have that wine element. It's going to be a little bit sweeter, maybe, have a little bit fruitier nose and taste. And so I was getting stronger nose and stronger flavors on the one on the right. And so I just kind of thought, well, maybe that's the ruby cask. But so I picked a winner, and it's the one that I thought was going to win, but I completely misidentified it. And that's par for my course. I mean, I'm hitting about 50-50 with identifying whiskeys on blind taste tests like this. So we do have a winner, and it is the bourbon cask. Now, what makes this particularly bad, when you go to the Famous Grouse website, they still have the ruby cask up, and I think they've got a sherry cask now, but the bourbon cask is gone. And you can't find it in the stores, you can't see it on the website, so I think they've discontinued the bourbon cask. And yet, here, my assumptions beforehand was that I liked the bourbon cask better. The blind taste, bourbon cask won. So it's the one that disappears from the stores. Obviously, they knew that I liked it. All right, sometimes we do a cocktail with the winner. And so stand by and I'll come up with some kind of a cocktail for this. I'm back, and I did the same cocktail that I did before, or mixed drink, whatever you want to call it. I used simply a 7-Up, bourbon cask, and a slice of lemon with ice. And the reason I did that is I did try a more fancy cocktail with Famous Grouse, and their flavors are just too weak for me to use really in a mixed drink. For whatever reason, now Smoky Black is a different story, but Famous Grouse failed in a cocktail. I think Ruby failed in a cocktail, And so, yeah, what I did with Bourbon Cask is I mixed it with 7-Up the other day, and it actually worked. So here we go. And yes, that does work. It's still a little bit on the weak side. Let me add a little bit more. All right, this very simple mixed drink with 7-Up and Bourbon Cask tends to work. So we have a winner. Yeah, and the lemon adds to that. So this is the winner of the losers bracket right here, Bourbon Cask. Coming up next on Blended Scotch Reviews will be the winners bracket, and that will be the famous Grouse versus Smoky Black. That's coming up next. And then after that, we're going to do something special with a blended malt, the Naked Grouse. They changed the name to protect the guilty. It's now called Naked Malt. Same family, though. So then we'll add that one to the mix. All right, this is Blended Scotch Reviews for Stab the Dragon, out here.